I want to tackle this subject because a lot of people put a lot of stress and just anguish over a decision like this, but honestly, I don't think it's that complicated. So, we're going to talk about whether or not you should go to grad school or whether or not you should go directly into industry and get a job. So, first, we'll define the kind of jobs that you can get with various degree levels, and then get into the decision tree or the decision matrix that you could use if you wanted to in deciding your next step. So, with a bachelor degree or really a master's degree in chemistry, the chemist will usually find a job as a bench chemist, and this is usually in a quality control lab or working in a research lab. And you'll be working under people in a junior role, first learning the ropes and then working your way up some sort of technical ladder of promotions if you decide to stay at that company. So if you're a chemical engineer with a bachelor degree, you're most likely going to get a job as a process engineer. And that means you're given one unit operation in a plant, like a distillation column, or you're given an entire process in a bank of different processes that you're able to engineer, for lack of a better word. You're the one troubleshooting it. You're the one looking into process improvements, figuring out why some things might be more or less efficient, and then proposing capital projects where you have additions to the plant. Now, there are many other career avenues that you can use in both of those fields. They are very broad fields. So this can include chemical sales. This could include consulting, and this is more opened up to you if you have a master's degree. You can start your own business. One thing for people with bachelor degrees specifically, or especially with millennials and Gen Z people, are microbreweries and microdistilleries. But if you have just an idea and you find people who are willing to fund you on that, there's a number of people who go down the entrepreneurial route and find it very rewarding. There's law school. So if you want to go into intellectual property law, your technical degree will serve you very well there. You can go to med school. You can teach STEM in primary or secondary schools. There's a number of people who get STEM degrees and then go do Teach for America for a couple of years and then decide, I'm going to be a science teacher. Like, okay, you do you. What I'm getting at here is that there's a huge amount of diversity, and just because you're a chemistry major doesn't mean you're locked into a career as a bench chemist. Now, PhDs are a little bit different, and by a little bit I mean a whole lot, because a PhD marries you to research. When you have a PhD degree, you're basically telling employers that I want to be in academic research or doing fundamental research. That's mostly the academic end. You might want to be doing process scale-up research or bench scale research for a company. Whatever you're doing, the title is going to end with, or the job description is going to end with you doing research in a lab. Now, there's a lot less diversity with respects to the tasks that you're doing. But there's a huge diversity in the types of research that will be available to you, and those are the ones that I've already outlined. Now, the huge downside to this is that once you have a PhD, you're considered overqualified for most bachelor and master level jobs. There is currently, in 2019, an oversupply. There's more people graduating with PhDs than there are jobs currently available. So that usually means that you have to do a protracted job search. This could last up to 6 months to a year. I've spoken with some people that lasted 1.5 to 2 years. I think the national average for employment is, when you're changing a career in the sciences, is something like 1 year to 2 years. And if you're switching, especially from academia to industry, that's considered a job change and a career change. So it takes a long time to find it. Me personally, I had a 9-month job search after finishing my PhD before I got my postdoc, and I just wrapped up a 10-month job search where I finally was able to land my job. You're not really in control of when you get a job offer. You're just in control of who you speak with and the number of places that you are applying. So what I'm getting at here is that you need to seriously consider whether or not grad school is right for you, because if you go for a PhD, you wind up getting it, and then you find that you don't really like research that much, tough. You're stuck. And I think a lot of people are afraid of that when they're thinking of going to grad school. So by the time you get to your fourth or fifth semester, this is where you really start seriously considering whether or not this is the right path for you. And you should have, if you're following my advice from the previous video about networking, you should have at least a dozen of these informational interviews under your belt and have an idea of what you think you would enjoy or what you would not enjoy. So the decision tree that comes at this point when you're a junior and leading in, especially towards the end of your junior year, this is where you're usually making that decision. And the rubric, the decision matrix here, I don't think it's honestly that complicated. So ask yourself the question, do I want to go to grad school? If the answer is yes, 100% research is the career for me, this is what I want to do, go to grad school. It's a no-brainer. If the answer is no, that you just want to get out, you want to experience the world, you want to make some real money, you just want to get your feet wet before you really want to consider options in the future, don't go to grad school. You go right to industry. If you are unsure, don't go to grad school yet. And I think a lot of people fall into this category where they're really not sure and they wind up making the jump. And I've seen it myself. It works out for some people where, they love research and they're totally excited about it and they go on to have an enthusiastic and exciting career. And I've also seen it where people just don't like it very much. They finish their PhD and then they become an entrepreneur. That was a guy I went to grad school with. He did that. Another person joined a band and then started touring the local area and then doing a tour of the country for a couple of years before they eventually came back to doing a professional engineering job. So if you are uncertain, don't put yourself into the position where you might get stuck. So then this raises the question of what exactly you're going to be doing if you fall into this category. And even if you're one of the people who fell into the category that, yes, I absolutely want to go to grad school, you might want to consider this as well because it improves your resume for the next step after that. So, if you go and get a job immediately after you finish your undergraduate degree, as you're deciding whether or not you want to go to grad school, this has a couple of different functions. The first is you're getting actual real-world experience in a plant or as a chemist, as a chemical engineer, and this benefits you in your job search afterward. The second is you find out whether or not this is something you want to do longer term without going back to school. And if you absolutely love your job, or you like your job and you want to keep pursuing with that, there's no reason for you to go back to grad school unless you're trying to accomplish a very specific goal. But honestly, if you're happy with where you are, I say stay there. Happiness is worth way more than, say, a little bit extra paycheck or a couple extra initials after your name. So the third functionality here is more monetary. You're making, as a chemist, probably $50,000, $60,000 a year, and as an engineer, maybe up to $60,000 or $70,000 a year. And with this, you can pay off your student debt. You can buy yourself a vehicle or buy yourself a more reliable vehicle. You can start saving for retirement and for your future. Set up yourself a good emergency fund. So even if you do go back to grad school, you have a safety net in case you need to, say, go to the emergency room, or your car breaks down and you need to put a deposit on a newer vehicle. Because when you go to grad school, you're only going to be making between $20,000 and $30,000 per year. It's going to defer your student loans, yes, but you're not able to really save for the future. And as I mentioned before, when you get out and you're looking for jobs, a lot of these jobs will say either 0 years experience or they want people with anywhere between 1 and 5 years experience. And for a lot of these companies, the academic research that you do in pursuit of your PhD, a number of them don't really view that as real experience. So this is where it could benefit somebody who was absolutely certain that they wanted to go to grad school, but they went and got a job anyway, because this is more of that real experience that some employers are really picky about. So yeah, that's my whole take on that issue. Again, As I've mentioned in other videos, if you ask a room of 10 people their opinions on this topic, you might get 5 to 8 different answers. And I would encourage you to ask those other people to get their takes on this. Because a decision like this, grad school or going right into industry, it's a big decision that will ripple through the rest of your career. And I advise you that once you've made a decision, just put the blinders on and go straight forward. You've made that decision, and now you're going to stick with it. You're going to own it, and you're going to take the good and the bad as they come.